Welcome to video 4 on the compare to baseline tool, and this is where it gets exciting. This is where we actually get the results out at the other end. So we're going to use the same sheet we were updating in video 3. You can see here we've gone for a period of 90 days for the baseline and 10 for the analysis. We've got 1,000 downloads for the baseline and only 300 for the analysis, $2,000 earned for the baseline, $400 for the analysis. And that lets you see how it's quite hard to look at that and not think, oh, the numbers have gone down. It's not been successful, even though you know the date periods are different ranges. Well, let's have a look at what that did to the downloads. And you can see the expected downloads for the analysis period are 111.1. If we were just to sneak back down here to downloads per day for the baseline, it's 11.1, and 10 days. Multiply them together, you get 111.1. And the actual downloads were 300. So although it looked like we were down, we're actually up a lot. We had 188 more downloads than we expected than the 111. And that's a 170% increase. So that means that advertising has worked very well. But you certainly wouldn't look at these numbers and say, oh yes, that looks like we've earned back half as much again. So we've doubled and more over that period. So yeah, we were expecting 111, double will be 222. It's almost tripled, not too far off it, so 170%. So that's really good. And then if we look at the royalties, they're not quite so good if we look at the percentage here. So we were expecting $222 and we got $400. So that's still an extra 177, that's still 80% up. So that is still a very healthy chunk of change. And you might just notice that the green of this cell is slightly stronger than the green of this. It's basically color coded on a range between minus 100% and 100%. So anything above 100% will get that same deep green. As we'll see later, with numbers that are a bit lower than this, they'll start to move more towards yellow. If they go below 0, they'll get a little bit yellowy orange, and if they get right the way down, they'll end up being a very impressive deep red. So that is where we are at so far in terms of the royalties, and we'll just have a look at the income per day calculations. So again, we now have it for the analysis period as well. So we had it before for the baseline period, and we have it here for the analysis period. So you can compare that directly in terms of how many downloads per day are you up, and how much income per day. Probably not as useful as the other numbers, although it might be if you're looking at this for an extended period. For something like Amazon ads, you want to keep it running and know how much of an effect it will have. Of course, if you actually want to look at how much you're spending on Amazon ads and how much you can afford to spend, we're looking at tools to do that as well. That is it for this, another quite brief video, and then in the next ones we will go on to some more advanced examples.